Namaste and welcome once again to our channel where we simplify brain and nerve science for non-medical people. Today we have a very interesting episode on sleep and trigeminal neuralgia, which can then also be extrapolated to other chronic pain conditions. Do watch till the end because we have many practical tips that you can implement in your own life. Trigeminal neuralgia is a brain nerve disorder that causes sharp electric shock-like pain in the face. At our center here, we have been dealing with trigeminal neuralgia patients for nearly 30 years. And what we commonly find is that these sufferers are unable to sleep without medication. New research shows that poor sleep can actually make the pain worse. To help us understand this better, we have with us today Dr. Amrita Bedekar, a sleep consultant, my colleague and a very good friend. She has worked closely with several patients who have suffered from insomnia, which is a sleep disorder, and helped them get better sleep and better health. I have known her for several years now, and I particularly value her insights because I have always admired her for her very clear and simple explanation to very complex topics. Together we will talk about how sleep and nerve pain are connected, what the latest science says, and simple practical ways to improve sleep. Today is the 22nd of July and it also happens to be the World Brain Health Day. So today's episode is extra special. So Amrita, so happy to have you on our channel.
So happy to be here.
Happy to be in conversation with you once
Absolutely.
again. So today we are going to be talking about sleep, which is a topic that you so very much love, and you've been practicing this
Indeed.
as a sleep consultant for the last 2 years and have treated many patients very satisfactorily in their words as well.
Indeed.
And I have jotted down a few questions so as not to miss anything.
Sure.
And so let's start with what actually happens in trigeminal neuralgia, the pain, and how it affects sleep and how sleep affects pain. So we'll start with that.
Right. So the relationship between any form of pain, which would include trigeminal neuralgia, so any form of pain and sleep is bidirectional. So having pain affects sleep and having poor sleep affects pain. So it sort of sets up a vicious cycle as well. So if we look at the relationship between pain affecting sleep first, we can also look at it over a few years because the relationship changes as well as time goes on. So initially when patient experiences pain, like in trigeminal neuralgia, the sharp electric pain, episodes of pain themselves can disrupt sleep. So a patient might wake up multiple times overnight, have disrupted sleep because of pain. When they change over from side to side and something hits the side of the face that's affected, they might wake up because of the pain initially. So the initial few weeks are a simple sort of disruption of sleep because of the pain. If this remains unaddressed, then over a few weeks certain hormonal changes start happening which then affect sleep separately from the pain. So pain is a stimulus that sets off a strong stress response in our body. So we have raised cortisol. It also sets off our fight and flight response. So we have
cortisol itself is a stress hormone.
It also sets off the HPA axis. So we'll have raised sort of adrenaline as well in the body. Eventually over a few weeks, the hormones that make us feel good and rewarded and satisfied, so those are serotonin and dopamine, those start to get suppressed as well. So a few weeks of pain can result in a lot of hormonal up and down in the body, and this independently affects sleep. So we have the pain disrupting sleep, and then we have an added layer of hormonal changes which are disrupting sleep. So at this stage, they start disrupting sleep in additional ways. So it takes longer for a patient to actually fall asleep. They may wake up multiple times, and when they wake up, they don't go back to sleep straight away. So it takes longer to go back to sleep as well. And this sets off another vicious cycle that a patient starts getting anxious about going to sleep, having that pain again. So it sets up a whole new level of anxiety about sleeping as well. And this phase continues for a few more weeks. Over around few weeks to few months, additional changes start happening in the body because of unaddressed pain, and these are actually structural or physical changes happening in the brain itself. And it's not surprising perhaps that the regions of the brain which govern pain, sleep and emotion are very much overlapping. So pain in a chronic condition can cause anatomical or physical changes in parts of the brain such as hypothalamus or prefrontal cortex or amygdala, which also govern sleep and emotion. So at this stage, sleep is being affected directly by the brain changes as well. And once this happens, it would, of course, when the pain goes away or gets treated, it would actually take a few weeks to get back
Reverse
to a
it all.
level of normalcy from there. So this is the sort of progression that happens with pain and how it affects sleep over a few months. If you look at it the other way around, you know, how sleep can affect pain. So if you take two people who have had pain for a long time, and one of them for various reasons is able to sleep well and one of them isn't able to sleep well, how much pain these two patients perceive and how they perceive it itself will be different. So lack of sleep or poor quality sleep actually makes us perceive pain worse. It puts worse emotional affect or worse emotional connections to that pain, and that pain eventually gets worse and worse. In addition, just like we discussed initially, the effect is direct and then the effect goes via hormonal systems. So poor sleep itself can raise cortisol, and it can raise inflammatory mediators as well. So it can raise the levels of TNF alpha or cytokine, things like that, which make any inflammatory pain worse. So it's a very, very bidirectional relationship which just gets worse over time and gets into a vicious cycle.
I think if I have to summarize what you said, it's that the initial pain leads to beginning of poor sleep.
Correct.
And the poor sleep itself leads to hormonal imbalances.
Absolutely.
It increases the bad hormones and reduces the good hormones.
Well said.
And this problem with the hormones itself starts making the patient more sensitive to pain.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
both ways it works.
Correct,
When you
correct.
said bidirectional, this is what it means.
Correct.
And pain itself creates more pain. So there are changes that happen in the brain,
Yes.
and which makes the patient more sensitive to pain, even other kinds of pain.
Absolutely.
Not only the
Absolutely.
trigeminal pain, as well as emotions are affected, irritability, anger, interpersonal relationships. So many
Absolutely.
things get affected, and over a period of time, if this pain is not treated or if the sleep is not addressed, then personality changes can happen.
Absolutely.
And the good thing is these things can all be reversed
yes.
once we cut this pain cycle.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have seen that some patients actually wake up with pain during sleep, but some others say that they are able to sleep through the night because they are on medication. So is it possible for pain to actually wake up somebody from sleep?
So yes, it's absolutely possible, and the reason is probably hidden in our evolution. So when we were humans who lived in the jungle, who had to constantly be aware of predators and danger and so on, if there was anything that caused us pain while we were sleeping, we needed to become aware and vigilant in a hurry. So yes, pain does wake patients up from sleep when it's not treated with medication. In addition to this, there are, like you said, there are patients who report that their sleep is not disrupted. But there are also studies which say that a patient may not remember having their sleep disrupted because of pain, but the hormonal changes keep happening as well.
Nevertheless.
No, yes. So for example, if patient has had a good night's sleep, or so they think, but they have had episodes of that electric shock type of pain while they were asleep, it would still continue to raise their cortisol.
So that means it's recorded in their brain, but it has not been enough to wake them up.
Correct. So it hasn't been enough to wake them up, and it still continues to affect their sleep cycles themselves. So sleep might be more fragmented, and over a period of time, while they may not remember waking up, or they may think they are sleeping well, it still means that when they wake up in the morning, they don't feel absolutely refreshed. So they start feeling slightly groggy, they feel like they haven't had enough sleep because they are not getting enough of the deep sleep or the dream sleep in continuity that they would have got without these episodes of pain.
So can I just interrupt you here? What exactly, there are different stages can you just in a few sentences explain
Absolutely,
to our
yes.
viewers what stages of sleep there are?
So when we fall asleep and we stay asleep for 7-8 hours, it's not like we get into, we are awake and then we have a block of sleep and then we wake up. That's not how sleep works. Sleep happens for all of us, for all normal adults, in cycles. So every around 1.5 hours or so, we are getting into a new sleep cycle. Each sleep cycle is divided into light sleep, deep sleep and dream sleep phases. So throughout the night we keep going through these cycles of being in light sleep, dream sleep, deep sleep, light sleep, deep sleep, dream sleep, and so on, and this just repeats throughout the night. So when I say pain affects these cycles, what I mean is the amount of time that we spend in deep sleep, or the one that causes us or gives us good recovery and repair, and that is reduced. So each of these have different functions for our body. The deep sleep is important for repair and recovery of various tissues, and dream sleep is important for memory and consolidation of learning, and they are affected by the pain.
And so pain reduces these phases?
It reduces specifically the deep sleep and dream sleep phases. So we feel less refreshed, recovery is worsened, as well as eventually with chronic pain, cognitive function or the ability of patients to learn new things and to remember new things is also affected, because REM sleep is also affected.
I see.
So in summary, of the 3 phases of sleep, deep sleep is the one that gives us recovery and refreshment, and dream sleep is the one that is important for memory and learning. And these deep and dream sleep are both reduced, and their continuity is lost because of pain.
That's interesting, because that also ties in with the next question that I had was, most of these patients for control of pain are on medication like carbamazepine or gabapentin or congeners of these, and these medicines themselves affect sleep,
Right.
but they affect them differently. Pain also affects sleep, so it's a very confused state for the brain to have the pain as well as the
Absolutely.
medicines. What do you have to say about?
So interesting question. So let's look at 2 of the main medications used in trigeminal neuralgia. One of them is carbamazepine and one is gabapentin. So with carbamazepine, it has 2 effects on sleep. One of them is that it reduces the pain, so sleep is better. But the other effect is that it reduces the amount of dream sleep that the patient gets. So among these 2, the patient will feel better because they slept and the pain was overcome during sleep, but eventually it affects sleep cycles by reducing REM sleep. So long term, this might still affect memory and consolidation and the quality of sleep that the patient experiences. On the other hand, if you look at GABA, it itself is a hormone, is a medication that improves sleep. So in fact, it's sometimes off-label, used in the treatment of insomnia patients as well. It increases the amount of time that a patient spends in deep sleep and dream sleep. So it improves the quality of sleep. So its effect in a patient of chronic pain is that it reduces the pain and anxiety as well as improves sleep. The difficulty with gabapentin is when we try to wean it off. So whenever these medications following the resolution of this pain are weaned or tapered, that's when gabapentin is going to be more of a problem.
Yeah, so this is interesting because many patients actually are able to go off gabapentin easier than they're able to go off carbamazepine.
Right.
Practically, this is what I have found. And see, how we see this is that, as you are very well aware, MVD surgery is the only effective solution as a long-term treatment option for treating trigeminal neuralgia. And the aim of the surgery is not only to take away the pain, but also to reduce the medication. So it has a twofold indication. And after surgery, when the pain actually goes away, the time comes to reduce the medication.
Right.
And we typically have a particular protocol on, depending on what dosages they were on, the personality of the patient, the weight of the patient. There are many things that we take into consideration when we reduce. And that's when the patients actually start telling us about different problems they face when we start reducing the medication. And that has always made me feel, most of us think medicines are okay. I mean, it's the easiest thing to do. Let's take medication, let's not go for surgery. But what many people don't realize is that medications themselves carry so many different risks, not in terms of life risk perhaps, but other kinds of risks. So what do you have to say about tapering medication or going off medication or withdrawal effects that are seen with these medications?
So with both of these, there is one common effect seen when you try to reduce them, that's insomnia. So once the medication is taken away, even though now the original insult, the original trigger which caused the sleep problem, which was the pain, so that's gone away. But the changes that have happened because of it, the hormonal and structural changes, as well as the changes which have happened because of the medication itself, make it difficult for the patient to fall asleep.
Correct.
So insomnia is one of, or difficulty in falling asleep is one of the major side effects of reducing these medications. The second,
many patients say they're unable to sleep till 2 or 3 in the morning.
Absolutely, yeah. The second effect seen is the changes in the sleep cycles. So whenever there is recovery from an insult, or whenever such a medication is being reduced, the brain reacts by a rebound increase in REM sleep or dream sleep. So patients might experience, I think you were telling me that this happens, that patients experience vivid dreams or nightmares which they may recall later as well. And because REM sleep or dream sleep is increased and deep sleep is reduced, they don't feel refreshed in the morning, they feel groggy. And this is something that already a patient has had personality changes, is more prone to stress and anxiety. And then when they realize that after the surgery, after their pain has gone away, they still have trouble sleeping, it again gets them into that spiral of anxiety and being depressed about it, being irritable about it, and so on. What is sort of important to realize is that the changes that have happened in the hormones and the structure of the brain are going to take a few weeks to reset. So even if the original pain has gone away, it's going to take a few weeks for the brain to catch up to this fact that it no longer needs to be hyper vigilant and hyper aware and emotionally charged to react to pain. So we have to give these few weeks of recovery time for these patients as well.
Yes, so that actually is a very strong case for looking for a long-term option
earlier
to the medicine. So, and that is why at our center as well, we offer MVD surgery fairly early on in the disease. Of course, not the first line of treatment, but it goes extremely well with medication. And we have this protocol depending on how the patient responds to withdrawal of medication. We decide the speed at which we have to reduce. And of course, a lot of support is required for the patient and the patient's family, because they have such vivid dreams which they think they are actually happening really. when we start withdrawing these medications, that we have to counsel them to expect this and to deal with it, and to have supportive family who also tells them that these did not happen really, and things will get better over the next few periods or the next few months. So now let's come to the most important part, is that, so what can patients do to feel better, fall asleep quicker, to have more relaxed sleep, more refreshing sleep, even while before they have undergone surgery and after they've undergone surgery, when we are weaning them off all the medication?
So initially, when a patient experiences pain of any sort, including trigeminal neuralgia, I think seeking early treatment for the pain itself, early appropriate treatment, would help reduce the changes that have happened, that might happen because of the hormonal and physical changes in the brain. So seeking help early is important. Secondly, which sort of help should be offered for long term is also something to look at, because while we think that we are giving these medications only to reduce the pain and the patient is settled on it, long term these medications are causing changes in our brain. So that's a risk that needs to be assessed. Once that pain has been addressed, perhaps they've had surgery, or the chronic pain has been addressed in some way, when reducing these medications, there are a lot of things that patients can do to help their hormone systems get in balance quicker. So, and these inputs might actually sound simple, but they have very powerful effects on our hormone systems. So, the first of these is actually during the recovery period to get a fair amount of sunlight. Sunlight is really important for our melatonin, serotonin, dopamine axis. So many of the hormones that are involved in sleep are governed by sunlight exposure. So daytime exposure to sunlight is one of the things that I really recommend to people
so
who
less
struggle with
screen
sleep.
time and more
Daylight. Yes, absolutely. We need to have an effective contrast between day and night. So our brain needs to realize that this is day, with major big inputs like sunlight and the other ones which we will discuss. And especially during recovery phase from such a strong insult and strong medication, after sunset, patient needs to ensure darkness and no screen. So this is one of the interventions that can really help them reset their hormones faster. So make day brighter and make the night darker. The second input is the kind of nutrient intake that the patient has. So they need to have a nutrient dense diet in the day. So a lot of good protein, fat and good complex carbs can be added as well. Also important is what not to have. So there are factors in ultra processed food or packaged food and processed sugar which directly stimulate the secretion of dopamine. So for example, somebody who is undergoing weaning from these medication, if they have a sugary snack, they are likely to experience dopamine flooding, and it's very uncomfortable. So these patients during recovery should definitely avoid ultra processed food and sugary food. The third thing that can help is actually staying as active as they can. I know they are just recovering from chronic pain and surgery, which will affect their ability to, but it's not 100-0 thing. Just because they can't work out vigorously doesn't mean they should do nothing. So they can do simple exercises at home, or they can even just go for a outdoor walk. Sunlit walk is great for all hormonal systems,
and we have plenty of sunlight here in India.
We are lucky. Yes. So being active or being as mobile as possible would help. And the fourth thing again is something that we wouldn't imagine but really helps. So it's having good social interaction. So chronic pain can have isolated these patients when they were suffering from it. So they don't feel like stepping out, they don't feel like conversing and so on. So taking that up again can really help reset serotonin as well. So these four are the major inputs during recovery that would help: sunlight, paying attention to good nutrition and avoiding the bad stuff, keeping active or movement and social interaction. And these are the very things that probably these patients have been avoiding when they had their
Correct.
chronic pain. So these inputs would really help with getting better sleep during the weaning process and getting the hormonal recovery faster.
Wonderful. I think you've touched upon so many things, and I learned a lot from this conversation that I have had with you. And I find it particularly interesting that the messages that you gave towards the end on how to actually deal with sleep, all these like good exercise, good nutrition, spending time in the daylight, and interpersonal relationships or having good interpersonal interactions, all these are essential for good brain health as well.
Absolutely.
And today being World Brain Health Day, this is also our message to you that this is what each one of us has to be doing. Less screen time, more interpersonal time, spend more time outdoors, spend more time talking to people. Talking to people actually can be stressful, but trying to find stress-free people that you can talk to. Do you have any take-home message for our viewers?
Wow, okay. So I think my take-home message is not just for sufferers of chronic pain. It's for everybody who is interested in improving their sleep health, you know, whatever the reasons for the disruption. And that's to make day feel more like day for our body and to make night feel more like night for our body. So give strong daytime inputs in the daytime and lack of these inputs. So all of the things that you mentioned should not happen after sunset. So no lights, no screens, no active social stressors in the night, and no meals after sunset as well. So that would be my take home message, that keep the day day and keep the night night.
Wonderful. So simple and yet so deep.
And so difficult.
Difficult. True that, true that. So it's been a pleasure having you with us, Amrita.
It's been a pleasure being here.
We look forward to having another episode with you on sleep and hemifacial spasm, which is another nerve disorder that we treat. If you liked this video and if you are interested in more such informative videos, do watch other episodes on our channel, where we bring to you brain and nerve disorders in simple language. Thank you and see you next time.